Ben Carter was fixing a broken air filter in Section C when the alarm started screaming. The sound cut through the quiet hum of Aurora Base like a knife. He dropped his wrench and looked up at the red lights flashing on the ceiling. All crew. To stations. This is not a drill. Unknown ships approaching. All crew to stations. Commander Jake Morrison's voice echoed through the hallways of the research station. Ben had never heard the commander sound scared before, but there was something in his voice now that made Ben's stomach twist. Ben grabbed his tools and ran toward the main control room. Aurora Base was not a big place. Only 30 people lived and worked on the station that orbited the planet, Kepler 442b. Most of them were scientists studying the planet below. Ben was just the guy who fixed things when they broke. The control room was chaos when he arrived. People were running around, checking screens, and talking fast into their headsets. Dr. Lisa Kim was at the main computer, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Security Chief Danny Rodriguez stood behind her, his hand resting on his weapon. What's happening? Ben asked Martinez, one of the other technicians. Ships, Martinez said, his face pale. Big ones, really big ones. Ben looked at the main screen. 3 massive ships hung in space like metal mountains. They were dark gray and covered in spikes and weapon ports. Each ship was 10 times bigger than Aurora Base. Ben had never seen anything like them. Can we talk to them? Commander Morrison asked Dr. Kim. They're sending a signal, she said. Audio and visual? Put it on screen? The image that appeared made everyone in the room step backward. The creature on the screen was huge, maybe 12 feet tall. It had 4 arms and skin that looked like armor. Its eyes glowed yellow, and when it opened its mouth, Ben could see teeth like knives. I am War Captain Zethkar of the Vorthek Empire, the creature said in a voice like thunder. You will surrender your station immediately. Resistance is useless. Someone behind Ben made a choking sound. Dr. Kim's hands were shaking as she worked at her computer. Commander, she whispered, these are Vorthek ships. The color drained from Morrison's face. Even Ben knew about the Vorthek. Everyone inhuman. Space had heard the stories. They were the monsters that lived in the dark between stars. They destroyed entire worlds. No one who fought them ever survived to tell about it. We need to evacuate, Morrison said. Get everyone to the escape pods? Sir, Rodriguez said, the pods can't outrun those ships. Then what do you suggest? We surrender. Maybe they'll let us live. Ben watched the alien captain on the screen. Zethkar was looking around what appeared to be a command center filled with other Vorthek warriors. They were all huge and covered in scars. Their weapons looked like they could blow up Aurora Base with one shot, but Ben noticed something strange. When Zethkar thought no one was looking, his shoulders slumped a little. The alien captain reached up and rubbed his left shoulder, wincing slightly. For just a moment, he looked tired. We have 1 hour to decide, Morrison announced. Start preparing the evacuation pods, just in case. The room erupted in activity again. People ran to gather important data and personal items. Some were crying. Others were praying. Ben stood still, watching the screen where Zethkar was talking to his officers. The alien captain removed his helmet, revealing a head covered in the same armor-like skin as the rest of his body, but his eyes. Ben had worked with machines his whole life. He knew the difference between something that was broken and something that was just running rough. Zethkar's eyes looked like a machine that was running rough. We should try to talk to them, Ben said. Martinez looked at him like he was crazy. Talk to them? Ben, these are Vorthek. They don't talk, they just kill. But what if they do talk? What if no one ever tried? Because people aren't stupid enough to try. Ben kept watching the screen. Zethkar was moving his left arm stiffly, like it hurt. When he turned to speak to another Vorthek, Ben could see that one of his shoulder joints was different from the other. It looked like some kind of mechanical part, maybe a replacement for an injury. I want to go over there, Ben said. The whole room went quiet. Even Commander Morrison stopped what he was doing and stared at Ben. What did you say? Morrison asked. I want to go over there, to their ship. I want to talk to their captain. Ben, Dr. Kim said gently. You can't be serious. Why not? What's the worst that could happen? They kill me? They're probably going to kill all of us anyway. Ben, you're a maintenance engineer, Rodriguez said. You fix air filters and water? Pumps, you're not a diplomat. Maybe that's exactly what we need, Ben said. Someone who's not a diplomat. Someone who just talks to people like people. Commander Morrison shook his head. Absolutely not. I won't send one of my crew to Guy for nothing. It's not for nothing, Ben insisted. Look at him. He pointed at the screen where Zethkar was rubbing his shoulder again. He's in pain. His, left shoulder is hurt. That's not a killer looking for victims. That's someone who needs help. You want to help a Vorthek warrior? Martinez asked. Ben, these things have destroyed entire star systems. And maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe no one ever tried to help them. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. On the screen, Zethkar was putting his helmet back on, preparing to contact Aurora Base again. Even if I agreed to this insane plan, Morrison said, which I don't, how would you even get over there? We have the maintenance shuttle, Ben said. It's small enough that they might not see it as a threat. And when you get there, what then? Ben picked up his toolbox from where he had dropped it. Then I do what I always do. I try to fix what's broken. The room was silent except for the hum of the computers and the distant sound of people preparing to abandon their home. On the screen, Zethkar was looking directly at the camera, his yellow eyes burning with what everyone assumed was rage. But Ben saw something else in those eyes. He saw pain, exhaustion, and maybe even loneliness. He saw someone who had been fighting for so long that he had forgotten any other way to live. Commander, Ben said quietly. Let me try. The maintenance shuttle felt like a toy next to the Vorthak warship. Ben gripped the controls as he flew closer to the massive vessel. The ship was called Bone Crusher, according to the message they had sent. The name made Ben's hands sweat. Commander. Morrison's voice crackled through the radio. Then you can still turn around. No one will think less of you. I'm going, Ben said. Someone has to try. The Vorthak ship was like flying into the mouth of a metal monster. Weapon ports lined the hull like teeth. Ben could see smaller fighter craft attached to the sides, each one bigger than his shuttle. Red lights blinked along the ship's surface. Like angry eyes, a deep voice spoke through the radio in heavily accented English. Human vessel, follow the guidance beam to Hangar Bay 7. Any deviation will result in destruction. Ben followed the beam of light that appeared in front of his shuttle. It led him through an opening in the ship's side that was barely big enough for his small craft. The hangar bay was enormous, built for ships much larger than his shuttle. His little vessel looked lost in the vast space. Vorthak warriors were waiting for him when he landed. They were even bigger than he had expected. The smallest one was at least 10 feet tall. They wore armor that looked like it was made from metal and bone. Their weapons hummed with energy that made Ben's teeth ache. Ben climbed out of his shuttle, with his toolbox in one hand and a small translation device in the other. The device would let him talk to the aliens without the radio delay. His legs were shaking, but he tried to walk normally. The Vorthak warriors surrounded him. Up close, Ben could see that their skin really did look like armor. It was gray and rough, with lines running through it like cracks in stone. Their forearms moved independently, and their yellow eyes tracked his every movement. "Human," one of them growled. "You will come with us." Ben nodded. He did not trust his voice to work. Properly, they walked through corridors that were built for giants. The ceiling was 20 feet high. The doorways were wide enough for 3 humans to walk through side by side. Everything was made from the same gray metal as the ship's hull. Red lights provided the only illumination, making everything look like it was covered in blood. Ben had to take 2 steps for every one of theirs. His toolbox felt heavier with each step. The Vorthak warriors did not speak to each other or to him. The only sounds were their heavy footsteps and the distant hum of the ship's engines. They stopped at a massive door marked with symbols that looked like battle scars. 2 of the warriors pressed their hands against panels on either side of the door. It opened with a sound like grinding teeth. The war room was the size of a basketball court. Maps of star systems covered the walls, many marked with red symbols that Ben suspected meant conquered. In the center of the room stood a table that would have been chest high to Ben. Around it stood more Vorthak warriors, all of them looking at him. At the head of the table stood Zethkar. The alien captain was even more intimidating in person. His forearms were thick as tree trunks. Scars covered his face and neck. His armor was more elaborate than the others, decorated with what looked like bones. When he looked at Ben, his yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter. "So," Zethkar said in his deep voice, "this is the human who wishes to speak." Ben swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. My name is Ben Carter. I am War Captain Zethkar. Why are you here, Ben Carter?" "I wanted to talk to you." "Talk," Zethkar said, the word like he was tasting something bitter. "What could you possibly have to say that would interest me?" Ben looked around the room. Every Vorthak warrior was staring at him. He felt like a mouse surrounded by cats. But he had come this far. "I noticed you were hurt," Ben said. The room went completely silent. The other Vorthak warriors looked shocked. Zethkar's eyes narrowed to burning slits. "What did you say?" "Your left shoulder," Ben said, his voice getting stronger. "It's bothering you. I saw you rubbing it during the transmission. And the way you move, something's wrong with the joint." One of the other warriors stepped forward. "How dare you suggest that our captain is weak?" "I didn't say he was weak," Ben said quickly. "I said he was hurt. There's a difference." Zethkar held up one of his hands. The other warrior stepped back immediately. "You think you can see weakness in me, human?" "Not weakness," Ben said. "Pain. I work with machines all day. I know when something isn't working right." "That shoulder joint is giving you trouble." Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. He moved his left arm slightly, and Ben caught the wince. That crossed his face. "And what do you propose to do about it?" Zethkar asked. Ben held up his toolbox. "I could take a look at it. Maybe I can help." The other Vorthak warriors started talking all at once, their voices angry and confused. Ben caught words like insult and impossible and kill him now. "Silence," Zethkar commanded. The room went quiet again. The alien captain stared at Ben for what felt like hours. Ben could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Finally, Zethkar spoke. "You are either very brave or very stupid, Ben Carter." "Probably both," Ben admitted. Something that might have been amusement flickered in Zethkar's eyes. "No one has ever offered to help a Vorthak warrior. No one has ever cared if we were in pain." "Well, I'm offering now." "Why?" Ben thought about it. "Because you look like you need help? And because maybe if I help you, you won't destroy my station." "At least you are honest." Zethkar looked at his officers. "Leave us." "Captain," one of them protested. "It could be a trick." "This human weighs perhaps 1/10 what I weigh," Zethkar said. "What trick could he possibly perform?" The other warriors filed out of the room, though Ben could see them watching through the doorway. When they were alone, Zethkar looked down at Ben. "You really think you can help me?" "I don't know," Ben said, "but I'd like to try." Zethkar was quiet for another moment. Then he began removing pieces of his armor. Underneath, Ben could see that his left shoulder was different from his right. Where there should have been natural joint, there was a complex mechanical device made of metal and synthetic materials. "It was damaged in battle 3 months ago," Zethkar said. "Our medics replaced it, but it has never worked properly. It causes constant pain." Ben moved closer, studying the mechanical joint. It was beautifully made but incredibly complex. He could see where moving parts were grinding against each other incorrectly. "Can I touch it?" Ben asked. Zethkar nodded. Ben reached out and gently examined the joint. He could feel the tension in the alien's muscles, ready to react if Ben tried. Anything threatening, but Ben was just doing what he always did. He was trying to figure out how to fix something that was broken. Ben ran his fingers along the mechanical joint in Zethkar's shoulder. The metal was warm to the touch and vibrated slightly with each movement. He could feel where the parts were grinding against each other, creating friction that should not exist. "This is beautiful work," Ben said, studying the complex device. Whoever made this knew what they were doing. Our best engineers designed it, Zethkar said. His voice was tight with pain as Ben moved his arm to test the joint's range of motion. That's the problem, Ben said. It's too good. Zethkar looked confused. Too good? Ben opened his toolbox and pulled out a simple wrench and a small bottle of lubricant. On my family's farm back on Earth, we had this old tractor. It was 50 years old and held together with tape and prayers, but it ran every day. My dad also bought a new tractor once. Top of the line, computerized everything. Cost more money than we made in 2 years. What happened to it? Zethkar asked, watching as Ben carefully began adjusting tiny screws in the joint mechanism. Broke down every week, Ben said. Too many complicated parts. Too many things that could go wrong. Sometimes simple is better. Ben found the problem. Quickly, the joint had dozens of micro-adjusters that were supposed to provide perfect movement. But they were so sensitive that they kept fighting against each other, causing the grinding and pain. Your engineers made this joint perfect for a laboratory, Ben explained as he worked. But you're a warrior. You need something that works in a fight, not something that works in a clean room. You can fix it? I think so. But I'll have to disable some of the fancy features. It won't be as precise, but it'll be more reliable. Zethkar was quiet while Ben worked. The human's hands moved confidently over the mechanical parts, making small adjustments here and there. It was strange to be touched so gently by someone from a species he had planned to conquer. Why do you not fear me? Zethkar asked suddenly. Ben looked up from his work. Should I? Every other species trembles at the sight of a Vorthic warrior. You examine me like I am a broken machine, Ben shrugged. I guess I see machines differently than other people. When something's broken, I don't get angry at it. I just try to figure out how to fix it. And you think I'm broken? I think you're hurt, Ben said. There's a difference. Ben went back to his work, humming softly as he adjusted the joint's calibration. It was an old song his sister Amy used to sing when they worked on farm equipment together. Tell me about your sister, Zethkar said. Ben was surprised. Amy? How did you know I had a sister? You mentioned her name when you were humming. She's studying to be a doctor, Ben said, smiling as he thought about her. Always wanted to help people. Even when we were kids, she'd bandage up every scraped knee in the neighborhood. She's the smart one in the family. And you? I'm the one who fixes things when they break. Zethkar watched Ben work. The human's movements were precise but not hurried. He talked while he worked as if repairing alien technology was the most natural thing in the world. My people were not always warriors, Zethkar said quietly. Ben's hands paused for a moment. No, long ago we were scholars and builders. We created beautiful cities and studied the stars. We were peaceful. What changed? Zethkar's 4 hands clenched into fists. The Devourers came. They were a race that consumed everything in their path. Planets, stars, entire civilizations. They attacked our homeworld without warning. Ben continued working on the joint, but he was listening carefully. We tried to negotiate with them, Zethkar continued. We offered them our knowledge, our resources, anything they wanted, but they only wanted to destroy. They killed billions of my people before we learned to fight. Back. What happened to them? We destroyed them completely. Every ship, every station, every trace of their existence. It took us centuries, but we made sure they could never hurt anyone again. Ben made a final adjustment and stepped back. Try moving your arm now. Zethkar slowly raised his left arm. For the first time in months, there was no grinding sound. No stabbing pain. He moved it in a full circle, then flexed his fingers. The joint worked smoothly and silently. How does it feel? Ben asked. Zethkar stared at his arm in amazement. Perfect. It feels perfect. Good, Ben said, closing his toolbox. Just remember to keep it lubricated. These fancy joints need more maintenance than simple ones. You have given me a great gift, Zethkar said. But I do not understand why. Because you needed help, Ben said simply. And because everyone deserves to live without pain? Zethkar looked at this small human who had just healed him with nothing. but simple tools and kindness. No one had ever helped a Vorthak without expecting something in return. No one had ever cared about their pain. After the Devourers, Zethkar said slowly, we swore we would never be weak again. We became conquerors because we feared being victims. But perhaps ... Perhaps what? Perhaps there is another way. From the doorway came the sound of whispered conversations. Zethkar's officers were talking among themselves, their voices worried and angry. Ben caught words like contamination and weakness and not natural. They think you have made me soft, Zethkar said. Have I? Zethkar tested his arm again, moving it without pain for the first time in months. You have made me remember what it feels like to be helped instead of feared. Is that a bad thing? Among my people, it could be seen as weakness. And weakness. And a leader means death. Ben packed away his tools. Where I come from, we think the strongest people are the ones who help others. Your people are strange, Ben Carter. Maybe, but we're still here, aren't we? Zethkar put his armor back on. But he moved differently now. Without the constant pain, he stood straighter and moved more gracefully. The other warriors noticed immediately when he stepped into the corridor. Captain, one of them said, you move like your injury is healed. It is healed, Zethkar replied. How is that possible? Zethkar looked back at Ben, who was following, quietly behind with his toolbox. The human fixed it. The warriors looked shocked. Some of them stared at Ben with confusion, others with suspicion. A few whispered words that Ben's translator could not interpret, but their tone was not friendly. As they walked back toward the hangar bay, Ben could hear the Vorthak officers talking behind them. Their captain had been changed by contact with a human, and they did not know what that meant for their people or their empire, but Ben was not thinking about politics or empires. He was thinking about how good it felt to fix something that had been broken for so long. And he was thinking about the look in Zethkar's eyes when the pain finally went away. Sometimes the most important victories were the smallest ones. News traveled fast through both fleets. By the time Ben returned to Aurora Base, everyone knew that he had not only survived his meeting with the Vorthak captain, but had somehow healed the alien's injury. The reaction was not what Ben had expected. You did what? Dr. Kim stared at Ben like he had grown a second head. I fixed his shoulder joint, Ben said for the third time. It was just a mechanical problem. Ben, Commander Morrison said slowly, do you understand what you've done? You've made contact with the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and now they're asking for you specifically. That's good, right? Ben asked. It means they want to talk instead of fight. Martinez shook his head. Or it means they're planning something worse. Maybe they want to study you. Figure out how humans think so they can kill us more easily. Ben looked around the room at his crewmates. These were people he had worked with for 2 years. They knew him. But now they were looking at him like he was a stranger. He's been brainwashed, someone whispered. The aliens did something to his mind. I'm fine, Ben said firmly. Zethkar is not what we thought. He's just a person trying to do his job, like all of us. His job is killing people, Rodriguez pointed out. Maybe, but maybe it doesn't have to be. On the Vorthak ship, similar conversations were happening. Sub-Captain Krigoff stood in the warriors' common area, addressing a group of senior officers. He was younger than Zethkar, but just as large, with fewer scars but more ambition. Our captain has been contaminated, Krigoff declared. He allows a weak creature to touch him. He speaks of the human with respect. This is not the way of the Vorthak. The other warriors murmured agreement. They had seen how Zethkar moved. After the human's visit, without pain he seemed different. Softer, the human has made him weak, another warrior said. He thinks like prey now instead of predator. Exactly, Krigoff said. And weak leaders bring destruction to the pack. Our enemies will see this softness and think we can be defeated. In his private quarters, Zethkar sat alone, testing his healed shoulder. The joint moved perfectly without the constant ache that had plagued him for months. But the healing had cost him something else. His warriors no longer looked at him with the same respect. A chime sounded at his door. "Enter." Krigoth stepped inside, flanked by two other officers. "Captain, we need to talk. Speak. The crew is concerned about your interaction with the human." "The human healed my injury," Zethkar said. "Should I not be grateful?" "Gratitude is for equals," Krigoth replied. "The human is prey. Showing gratitude to prey makes you appear weak." Zethkar stood, his forearms flexing. Even without his armor, he was an intimidating figure. "You question my strength?" "I question your judgment," Krigoth said boldly. "And according to warrior law, when a sub-captain questions his leader's fitness to command, there is only one way to resolve it." The challenge hung in the air between them. Every Vorthak knew the law. When leadership was questioned, combat would decide the outcome. The winner lived and commanded. The loser died. "You challenge me?" Zethkar asked quietly. "I do." Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. 3 months ago, he would have accepted immediately. A challenge to his authority would have been met with instant violence. But now he found himself thinking of Ben's words about there being other ways to solve problems. "Very well," Zethkar said finally. "Tomorrow at the noon cycle. Combat to the death." "To the death?" Krigoth agreed. When Ben heard about the challenge, he immediately asked to return to the Vorthek ship. Commander Morrison tried to refuse, but Ben threatened to take the shuttle without permission. Reluctantly, Morrison allowed him to go. Ben found Zethkar in the war room, staring at tactical displays. The alien captain looked tired again, but not from physical pain this time. "You came back?" Zethkar said without turning around. "I heard about the challenge. This is because of me, isn't it? Krigoth believes you have made me weak. Have I?" Zethkar turned to face him. "You have made me think. Among my people, thinking too much can be dangerous." "Not thinking can be dangerous too," Ben said. "Look, this whole fight is stupid. You're injured and tired from years of war. Krigoth is fresh and angry. He has an advantage. The law is the law. What if there was another way?" "There is no other way." Ben started pacing, his mind working on the problem like it was a broken machine that needed fixing. What if there was? What if we could prove that thinking and helping others makes you stronger, not weaker? "How?" "Let me fight him." Zethkar stared at Ben. "What did you say?" "Let me be your champion. I'll fight Krigoth instead of you." "Ben, you weigh perhaps 150 pounds. Krigoth weighs 800 pounds and has 4 arms. He would kill you in seconds." "Maybe, but what if I didn't fight him the way he expects?" Ben explained his idea. It was crazy, but it might work. Instead of a traditional death match, they would have a contest of strategy and skill. The loser would step down from command, but live to serve the winner. It would test leadership ability rather than just physical strength. "Krigoth will never agree to this," Zethkar said. "He will if you phrase it right. Tell him he can prove that Vorthek's strength is superior to human cleverness. Make it about honor, not just winning, and if you lose, then you step down and I'd probably die anyway. But if I win, you keep command and maybe your people start to see that there are different kinds of strength." Zethkar looked at this small human who was willing to risk his life for an alien he had just met. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because you're my friend," Ben said simply. "And because someone needs to prove that helping others isn't weakness?" When Krigoth heard the proposal, his reaction was exactly what Ben had hoped for. The human thinks he can defeat a Vorthek warrior. This will be amusing. I accept these terms. But when I crush this soft creature, all will see that strength comes from power, not from kindness. Word of the unusual combat trial spread through both ships quickly. Most of the humans thought Ben had completely lost his mind. Most of the Vorthek thought Krigoth would win easily and that their captain would finally return to proper Vorthek behavior, but a few people on both sides began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this strange human engineer might actually know what he was doing. The trial was set for the next day in the main hangar bay. Ben spent the evening preparing, not with weapons or armor, but with his tools and his understanding of Vorthek technology. If he was going to win, It would not be through strength. It would be through being cleverer than anyone expected. The main hangar bay of the Bone Crusher had been cleared for the combat trial. Vorthic warriors lined the walls, their yellow eyes glowing in the red light. On one side of the bay, crew members from Aurora Base watched through a video link, most of them convinced they were about to witness Ben's death. Ben stood in the center of the massive space, looking tiny next to the alien technology around him. He had refused armor and weapons, carrying only his toolbox and a tablet computer. Across from him, Kregoth looked like a walking mountain of muscle and rage. "This is your champion?" Kregoth laughed, the sound echoing through the hangar. "This soft little creature, I could step on him by accident?" Zethkar stood at the edge of the combat area. "The trial is not about size, Kregoth. It is about leadership. Leadership comes from strength," Kregoth declared. "And I will prove it by crushing this human." Ben looked up at the ceiling of the hangar bay. Massive mechanical arms hung down, designed for moving heavy cargo and repairing ships. Power cables snaked along the walls. Gravity generators hummed beneath the floor. The whole space was filled with technology that most people took for granted. "What are the rules?" Ben asked. Zethkar stepped forward. "The trial consists of 3 challenges. First, a test of strength. Second, a test of skill. Third, a test of wisdom. The winner of 2 out of 3 challenges wins the trial. And if I lose, then I step down as captain and you will probably die. And if I win, then I remain captain and my people will have learned something new about strength." Ben nodded. "Let's do this." The first challenge was pure strength. A massive piece of ship's machinery needed to be moved from one side of the hangar to the other. Kregoth stepped up to the machine, which was the size of a small car. Using his 4 powerful arms, he lifted it and carried it across the hangar. In less than a minute." "Your turn, human," he said with a sneer. Ben walked over to the machine. There was no way he could lift it. Instead, he opened his toolbox and pulled out a simple lever and some metal blocks. In 10 minutes, he had rigged up a pulley system using the hangar's existing equipment. He moved the machine across the bay using mechanical advantage instead of muscle power. "Clever," Zethkar said. "But you took longer than Kregoth." "The challenge was to move the machine," Ben said. "It didn't say anything about time." The Vorthak warriors murmured among themselves. Some seemed impressed, others annoyed that the human had found a loophole. The second challenge was skill. Both contestants had to repair a damaged fighter craft engine within a time limit. Kregoth attacked the problem with typical Vorthak directness, tearing apart the engine and rebuilding it with brute force and determination. Ben took a different approach. He spent the first few minutes just looking at the engine, studying how it worked. Then he opened his tablet and quickly designed a diagnostic program. Instead of taking the whole engine apart, he identified the exact problem and fixed only what was broken. Ben finished 15 minutes before Kregoth. When both engines were tested, they both worked perfectly. But Ben's repair was cleaner and would last longer. 1 challenge each, Zethkar announced. The final challenge will determine the winner. The third challenge was wisdom. Both contestants were given a tactical problem to solve. A colony ship with 1,000 civilians was under attack by pirates. The pirates had superior weapons but inferior numbers. How would they save the colony? Kregoth's solution was straightforward: attack the pirates with overwhelming force. Destroy their ships and kill every one of them. It was a typical Vorthak response, effective but brutal. Ben's solution was different. He had noticed something about the pirate ship designs that Kregoth had missed. They were old and poorly maintained. Instead of fighting them, Ben proposed jamming their communications and then broadcasting a fake distress signal from a nearby military base. The pirates would think reinforcements were coming and would flee rather than risk a fight they might lose. "The human's plan might work," admitted one of the Vorthak officers, "but it is not honorable. A warrior faces his enemies directly. Is it more honorable to save 1,000 civilians or to prove how tough you are?" Ben asked. The question hung in the air. The Vorthak warriors had never thought about combat in terms of saving lives. Instead of taking them, Zethkar considered both solutions carefully. Krigoth's plan would work, but many would die, including our own warriors. Ben's plan would save lives on both sides and achieve the same goal. The human wins through cowardice, Krigoth snarled. No, said Zethkar firmly, the human wins through wisdom. Krigoth's face twisted with rage. I do not accept this. The small one cheated. He solved the problems using his mind instead of his muscles, Zethkar replied. That is not cheating. That is intelligence. But Krigoth was beyond reason. With a roar of fury, he launched himself at Ben, his forearms reaching out to crush. The human who had humiliated him, Ben dove to the side and rolled behind a piece of machinery. Krigoth's attack smashed into the metal wall, leaving a dent the size of a dinner plate. The trial is over, Zethkar shouted. Stand down! I will not be defeated by a weak creature. Krigoth screamed, chasing Ben around the hangar. Ben ran, but he was also thinking. Krigoth was faster and stronger, but he was also angry and not thinking clearly. Ben led him toward the center of the hangar bay, where the gravity generators were strongest. When Krigoth lunged at him again, Ben jumped to the side and grabbed a power cable. He yanked it out of its socket, causing the local gravity field to fluctuate wildly. Krigoth, who weighed much more than Ben, was caught off balance by the sudden changes in gravitational pull. He stumbled and crashed into a pile of cargo containers. By the time the gravity stabilized, Krigoth was unconscious under a heap of metal boxes. The hangar bay was completely silent. Every Vorthak warrior stared at Ben in amazement. The tiny human had defeated their strongest fighter without throwing a single punch. Zethkar stepped forward. The trial is complete. Ben Carter has proven that there are many kinds of strength. Ben helped pull the unconscious Krigoth out from under the cargo containers. Is he okay? He will live, Zethkar said. And perhaps he will be wiser when he wakes. Over the following hours, everything changed. Zethkar officially declared that the Vorthak Empire would not conquer Aurora Base. Instead, he proposed something that had never happened before in Vorthak history. An alliance between equals. The humans would share their technology and problem-solving skills. The Vorthak would provide military protection and their advanced engineering knowledge. Together, they would explore the galaxy as partners instead of conquerors and victims. Ben became the first official human Vorthak liaison. He split his time between Aurora Base and the Bone Crusher, helping both species learn from each other. Human engineers worked alongside Vorthak technicians, discovering that they could accomplish far more together than either could alone. Some humans learned Vorthak combat techniques, while some Vorthak learned human approaches to diplomacy and problem-solving. The cultural exchange was awkward at first, but it grew stronger every day. 3 months later, Ben stood on the observation deck of Aurora Base, watching the joint fleet patrol the system. Human ships flew alongside Vorthak warships, their crews, working together to protect the growing alliance. Zethkar joined him at the viewing window. The alien captain moved easily now, his healed shoulder giving him no more pain. I received a message from my sister Amy today, Ben said. She graduated from medical school. She wants to come out here and help set up a medical exchange program. Your sister, the doctor, Zethkar said. She sounds like you. Someone who fixes things that are broken. Maybe that's what humans do best, Ben said. We fix things and we make friends. Even with giant alien warriors? Especially with giant alien warriors. They stood together in comfortable silence, human and alien, watching their combined fleets protect a future that neither species could have imagined alone. Ben had kept his promise to himself. He had found a way to build something instead of just fixing what was broken, and across the galaxy, other species were beginning to take notice of the unprecedented alliance between the tiny, clever humans and the mighty Vorthak Empire. Some were curious. Some were worried. All of them wondered what these unlikely partners might accomplish together. The age of human-alien cooperation had begun.